Dr. Jeff DWYER is with us, and welcome to the show again, my good friend.
Yeah, I think this is 3 or 4 times.
Oh yeah, Jeff used to investigate with us when we were Paranormal Zone TV, and John Heyer is in the chat room tonight. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
John was our techie for the show, but tonight I brought Jeff on because he is so excited. He is going to be on for the second time on Ghost Adventures tomorrow night at the famous Brookdale Lodge.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Oh yeah, he's so excited. We've investigated with Jeff many times the Brookdale Lodge. And but you know what? For all of those who don't know who Dr. Jeff DWYER is, Jeff, would you please give them some information about yourself, a little bit of your background?
Sure. I'm a PhD in cardiovascular physiology, so I have a strong science background. Taught medical school for a number of years, and I've been working in cardiology now for about 20 years. And that's my day job. My night job is really investigating the paranormal. And when I do that, I channel my efforts into basically 3 different areas. I write books. I've written 9 books on the paranormal topics, including The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigation, which is a textbook. And then 8 books in my Ghost Hunter series. And all of them are at Amazon.com.
Now, your ghost hunting series is quite popular.
Yeah, it really is. It's being sold in several foreign countries, I'm told, and so it's making its way around the world. I think one of the things that helps is the title, Ghost Hunter's Guide to San Francisco, New Orleans, Seattle. People relate that to the Ghost Hunters TV show, and so it sort of links to each other. So that's helped a lot.
Well, that was smart.
Yeah, well, it was accidental, but it's been fortuitous. And the second area I work in is as a researcher. I've done a lot of research for television shows, radio shows. I was a technical consultant on the movie Haunting in Connecticut. And I'm currently doing research for Ghost Adventures, working on a couple areas here in California. And then my third area is as a professional paranormal investigator, and I do go out and investigate cases, although it's hard to find time to do that very much, but I've got a couple of hot cases going on right now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, Jeff, I read a little bit about on your website about you started investigating because of why?
Well, I had my first experience when I was about 12 years old. I think this is a common scenario. A lot of us are aware of something paranormal when we're really young. And at that point, I was so convinced that what I saw was a ghost and it was real that I kept that belief all through my college, where I was directed into the scientific end of thinking. And so I kind of wear 2 hats in that regard. My work is scientific, but paranormal doesn't have a scientific basis to it, but it has an intuitive or spiritual basis that I simply won't let go of. So I'm drawn to it. And I've been looking into things for many, many years now. Sometimes not having a lot of time to do it because of my career, but other times I've been able to focus quite a bit on investigating New Orleans. I've spent a lot of time down there, investigating Seattle and Los Angeles. So I'm drawn into the paranormal despite my scientific background.
So, do you want to talk about the Brookdale Lodge?
Yeah, Brookdale Lodge is a place that many people are familiar with. It is a long history, which we can get into in just a little bit, but the Brookdale Lodge is known as a place that has at least 49 ghosts. It may have fewer, may have more than that for a number of reasons. And it kind of came up on the radar screen for Ghost Adventures quite a while ago. The producer contacted me and wanted information about it. And as you know, Ghost Adventures goes all over the U.S. now. They used to be somewhat limited, but they're up in Wisconsin, and they've been to South Carolina and Louisiana, and they've gone up into Massachusetts. So they're all over the country. And they wanted to come out to California, so we got some places together for them to think about, and they decided to go to the Brookdale Lodge, and we went there last July, largely because it has this reputation for hauntings, and it has a really fascinating historical record because of what it was at different times in its life, if you will. So the guys got really interested in it, and they came out in July, as I said, and we were there 3 days. And at that time, the lodge had been closed almost a year, I believe. It had shut down the hotel portion and shut down the bar because it didn't meet fire code standards. Last time we were there, in fact, it looked a little run down. Very nice people running the place, but it's old. The big dining room, the straddles the creek, was built in 1920, so it's nearly 100 years old, and it's been worn by the weather. So there are a lot of things about the place that didn't meet fire code and safety issues. Plus, there have been some accidents there, and there's some legal issues still pending, I understand. So to go in there, we had to get the local fire department to be on the scene the whole time we were there. And it was kind of weird to see this big fire truck sitting right outside the front door, and the firemen kind of follow us around as we went around the lodge there filming. I think they got a kick out of Zach and Aaron. They're the two funny guys in the group, and it was really interesting. In fact, one of the things that Zach does, and I'm not going to tell you because I want you to tune in tomorrow night and see this, but it was pretty outrageous. The fire guys just couldn't believe that he did this to Billy Tolley, who's the tech guy on Ghost Adventures, a really nice guy.
Okay.
So tune in for a big surprise on Brookdale Lodge on Ghost Adventures tomorrow night. So we were there 3 days, and Ghost Adventures is filmed by Aaron and Nick. They do carry the cameras around. But there's a big support crew too. When we did Winchester Mystery House a year earlier, there's even a bigger support.
Jeff was also with Ghost Adventures last year?
This was, we filmed in August of 2011, and it was on around Halloween 2011. We did Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. And they actually had a bigger crew then. They had about 10 or 11 people come up with them in a couple of vans. But they're really support people. A lot of times, once we started rolling the film, if you will, the support people were just kind of out of the way. But they're there to carry some of the heavy equipment around and keep the crowds back, because crowds do accumulate. They did at Winchester Mystery House. We had quite a few people.
Outside?
Because the tours were still going on in the daytime when we filmed all the background material, and the crowds were pretty interested in all of this. But at Brookdale, we didn't have crowds. We just had the owners around and the firemen around. That was kind of fun. And as I said,
so were they watching you guys?
They watched us. They went everywhere with us because they had to be close because of the fire and safety issues. But there's a big surprise coming up. But there's another funny thing that happened that Zach and I almost fell in the creek. If you know Brookdale Lodge, yeah, it's really pretty cool. The Brookdale Lodge has this huge dining room that straddles Clear Creek. And one of the things that makes it unique is the creek flows through this dining room, and that's what attracted a lot of people to go there starting in the 1920s. And in the 40s and 50s, it made it a really elegant, stylish, but rustic place for Hollywood people and other important people to go to.
Didn't it burn twice?
There were a couple of fires there, yeah. And each time, of course, had to be rebuilt. And they did a pretty good job of putting it back together after the second fire. The hotel part of it is still sitting there in ruins, though. That part looks pretty grim. But when we went down to the edge of the creek to film, to talk about where I saw the apparition of the ghost of Sarah Logan, of course Zach, he fools around a little bit, and the rocks are slippery, and
you mean you got close to the creek in the dining room?
Yeah, we were right down at the water's edge.
In the dining room?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we were right down there, and he's actually a pretty big guy. He's taller than me, and he's a pretty heavily muscled guy, and he fell against me, and I thought we were going over hard on the rocks. But it was a lot of fun. But I hope you'll tune in and see that too. We didn't get wet, but we came pretty close to it.
Oh my God!
It was fun.
Does Zach ever get scared?
I haven't seen him scared. He's a really interesting guy, and I like him quite a bit. And he's very theatrical on the show and dramatic and all of that. He's very nice, and when he's not in front of the camera, he's very business, very polite, very business. He's clearly in control of all of this. Everybody does what Zach asks them to do, and he has a very clear vision of what he wants to do. When he arrives at the places we've worked, like Winchester or Brookdale, it's very clear that he's done a lot of research. He's read all the material I've sent him, and he knows exactly where he wants to set up. But he's very open to finding out what else we can look into, since we're here looking at the physical place and not 3,000 miles away reading the stack of research material. So he's very good about looking at things and understanding what he wants to show and what angle he wants to show it at, and he can really move the cameras around very quickly and very effectively. So he's a very, very smart guy.
Now, what areas did you go into at the Brookdale?
We were in the upper room where you and I think, were up there doing some EVP once. That upper room above the dining hall, up near the front by the big stained glass window. There's a room up those stairs. We went into the oldest part of the lodge, which is the log cabin.
The original.
It looks like a log cabin, but it was a log building designed to be the office of the Grover Lumber Company. That was built in 1870.
That's rotting away.
It is, and it has a huge fireplace in there that's spectacular. Now that place was turned into a bar when Dr. Camp sold the place in 1942. From 1920 to 1942, it was a sort of a medical doctor's religious retreat camp, and people who came there weren't allowed to drink or have any alcoholic beverages. So once he sold the place, it went to the opposite end of the spectrum, and it became the place to go to have a drunken, wild weekend.
And the mobs, is that when the mobsters started coming in?
The Hollywood people came up first in the 40s. A lot of big stars were there: Marilyn Monroe, Tyrone Power, and Hedy Lamarr, and all kinds of big stars. And this continued into the 50s. It was in the 50s when the mob started to come up, possibly because a lot of Hollywood people were going there, and there was some interplay between the two. But also, it was secluded still in the 50s. It was really off the map in terms of going somewhere. Freeway system really wasn't developed in the early 50s in California, and this place is still some miles off the nearest highway. So it was pretty secluded. So the mob went there to carry out their
they
business.
had dirt roads still.
They had dirt roads, and some of the roads might have been slurry top too, so they could get there in cars okay, but it was just really like traveling to the other side of the moon almost. It's not something you would just come turn off the freeway and pull into a parking lot. It's not that easy back in the 50s. So the mob was going there to have their meetings, and they would also bring in people they wanted to snuff out. They would invite people there allegedly to talk to them about business, but then they would snuff them out and take them down into the caves that are underneath the property and bury them down there.
Now that tunnel started in what do they call that, the Mermaid Room?
Yeah, the Mermaid Room was a big bar that had a window that looked out into the swimming pool. And the window was part of the wall of the swimming pool, so you could sit at the bar and watch people swimming. Yeah, that's supposedly there's a passageway that leads from there. There's another one out behind that I looked at many, many years ago.
Oh, really? I didn't. Where's the other one?
It's way out. It's behind the building, behind the kitchen. Yeah, that's the one back in. Hate to tell you how long ago it was, but back in the early 80s, I went down into that one.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah. Nobody ever told us about that one.
And the theory is that the mob would snuff out their enemies and take them down in these caverns and just bury them down there. And that's one of the reasons why people think the place is haunted by mobsters who are murdered there.
But what else went on?
Well, lots of prostitution going on.
Yeah.
It was known as a place you could get away because the press, of course, reporters didn't really know too much about the place at the time, and so Hollywood people would come up there and have their affairs, and it was.
But tell them how they picked them.
Picked their partners, you mean? Yeah. I don't know.
Oh yeah. They would swim in the swimming pool, and the big glass is where the mobsters could sit, and they could view which one they wanted. The girls, I understand, had numbers on them.
Prostitutions, not the Hollywood fairs.
No, you tell them about the prostitution.
Yeah, well, the prostitution. Yeah, the girls would swim in the pool, and the guys would sit at the bar and kind of pick one out and say, I want.
They had numbers on them, didn't they?
Yeah, they had little numbers on them that were either hanging on a chain around the neck or pinned on their swimsuit, and so the guys could literally pick it out. That's kind of a gross way to do it, but that's what allegedly they did. There was a lot of weird stuff going on in there. This period of mobsters in Hollywood continued until about the early 60s when these people started going to Las Vegas instead of going to Brookdale Lodge.
Oh, is that what happened?
Started going to Las Vegas, yeah. So, and then the lodge kind of, settled down into more of a family resort. And in fact, when I was a little kid, we went there as a family.
Now, Jeff, when you went there, was the swimming pool where it is now, or did they have the two swimming pools outside?
No, the swimming pool was where it is now. It's a pretty big swimming pool, too. It's pretty big. For Ghost Adventures, we went up there to the swimming pool area. And that's where this really funny thing happened that you'll see tomorrow night. But we looked around up there too, and the pool had been empty for many, many years. But for some reason, when we got there, it was full of water.
Actually, when we were investigating there, it was full of water, and that black gate wasn't around it. Was the black gate around there?
Yeah, the black gate's still
they
there.
Put that up. Yeah.
But back in the 80s and 90s, when I used to go in there, it was empty. Yeah, but so it's got water in it now. So anyway.
So what other areas? Did you do EVP work in the Mermaid Room? Yeah,
we did in there, the upper room. We did in the big dining hall that straddles the creek, up in the swimming pool area, and then there's some other areas that I'm not supposed to tell you about until the show tomorrow night.
Oh, really?
That you'll see. The guys did some goofy stuff too. They've been doing some goofy stuff. They went to the boardwalk in Santa Cruz and went out there and played around on the rides. Yeah.
But that wasn't on tape.
That was yeah. That's going to be shown on the show, I think. I haven't seen the final cuts. I don't know what they've included. I mean, we were filmed there 3 days, and you got a lot about minutes.
Did you have to stay there for 3 days?
Not the whole 3 days. No, I went in the afternoon of the first day and left the morning of the third day. So they've in their shows lately they've been doing a little bit of tourist stuff too. When they go to a place, they'll go off and goof around a little bit. And so they went to the boardwalk in Santa Cruz and I think they went on a roller coaster there too. So
did they get recognized?
Oh yeah.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. Zack is pretty recognizable, and well, they all are these days, I guess. It's a real popular show. It's shown in 17 countries around the world.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they've kind of got the lock on Travel Channel. If you tune in on Fridays, if you look at the directory on Comcast, the reruns of Ghost Adventures starts about noon on Fridays. They just show a lot of repeated shows. Then they kind of break for news, I guess, or something else around 5 or 6 o'clock, and then they come on with, they've got something called Paranormal Paparazzi or something like that.
God,
it's got our friend Scott Grunwald on there.
It's a really bad show.
Yeah, and then they come back on about 7 with a couple reruns of Ghost Adventures, and then 9 o'clock is when the new episode is shown. So
well, now that you're the advisor, one of the advisors.
Well, I'm a researcher for them, yeah.
Do you think you'll be on more of their shows?
Well, we're working on 2 others right now, actually. We're working on Mare Island in Vallejo. And,
really?
Yeah, we're working on Sonoma also. It'd be fun to get the guys up to Sonoma. The 3 spots that we're probably going to film at are the Mountain Cemetery, where I've seen a full-bodied apparition before, and that's the Pioneer Cemetery in Sonoma. And then General Vallejo's house, which was actually built in New England, taken apart, shipped around Cape Horn in a sailing ship, brought to Sonoma by ox carts, and then reassembled.
Oh my God!
Yeah, actually they made 3 houses identical, shipped all 3 of them on the same ship. One of them still stands in Benicia, and one of them is General Vallejo's home in Sonoma, and the other one was built in San Francisco and it burned during the 1906 earthquake.
Oh, what a shame.
But we may film at the house, General Vallejo's house in Sonoma, and then Bartholomew Park Winery, which I've investigated several times. That's a great place.
I know. I've always wanted to go there to investigate, but we never did.
It's really fun. I've got a lot of really good EVP there. And one of the things that surprised me when I did my investigations there, I was looking for ghosts of the women who were incarcerated. There used to be a women's prison. The
winery?
Barth Park Winery, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it used to be a home for incorrigible young girls from Oakland and San Francisco and unwed mothers who were an embarrassment to their family in the 20s.
Oh my gosh.
So they were sent to Sonoma to, proceed with their pregnancy, have their baby. It was given up for adoption. There were a lot of abortions there. There were a lot of unfortunate fatalities during childbirth. And so in this place. And then after it was no longer used for women, it was used for men and boys with mental issues, mental retardation and other issues for a while. Then it became a Sonoma Valley Hospital before it kind of went vacant before Bartholomew Park Winery moved in.
Oh my
so there's a long
goodness,
history.
I didn't know that.
So
yeah.
I went there looking for EVP of all these people who had been there as patients and incarcerated and so forth. I got a lot of Indian stuff there.
You did?
Which is amazing. I got some EVP that are flutes and drums. Yeah, it's really interesting. I wish I had brought them along with me tonight.
Oh, you should have brought your recorder with you.
I wish I had, because I wanted to play some things we got at Brookdale, but I went and forgot the darn thing.
Oh,
But at
gosh.
Bart Park Winery, we got these drums and flutes, and it's really interesting because I asked the women there to play the piano, because they did play a piano. They had a choir, and instead I got this long 15-second flute, which is a fairly long audio. It's a 15-second. I said, well, that's really great, but can you do something else for me? And then I get this knock of a drum like this.
Really?
And then I said, well, I'd like something even more than that. And I guess they got tired of me because I just got one more note on the flute, and then that was it. But the guy was kind of like, blow me in, you're done, get out of here. So it was intelligent interaction, I believe.
Wow.
So it might be a ghost of an Indian there. And I since found out after that there was actually an Indian village in this little valley where the winery was established. So we may be picking up ghosts of Indians there, as well as the women who are incarcerated there and the other patients.
So it's pretty active.
Pretty active, yeah. And there's a dungeon. It was a dungeon at one time, I suppose. Now they call it a basement. And you go down a very steep flight of stairs, very dark. It's a small place, and it has a coffin chute. And back in the days when this place was, well, for all of its roles as a prison and an insane asylum and a hospital, bodies of the dead were taken to the basement, prepped for shipment out, put in a casket, and then there's a casket chute that goes up from the basement area up to the exterior of the building, where it was just picked up and put on a wagon and hauled away. So there's a casket chute there.
Now, do they give tours there?
You can walk around by yourself there. The building's not that big.
But do they allow you to see this stuff?
Whether you can go downstairs or not, it really depends on who you talk to over there.
I'll have to bring you with me.
But there's the main floor is half of it's tasting room, the other half is a museum. And where the museum is, there's a lot of artifacts in it. That was one wing of the hospital. In fact, there's a photograph that shows that part of the building had several beds in it at one time. So you kind of get an idea of what it was like back in the 20s.
Wow.
So I think it'd be a good place to bring in the Ghost Adventures guys, because they could do the cemetery, which has a lot of famous local pioneers in it, including General Vallejo and his family. I've seen an apparition there of a monk dressed in a brown monk's robe with a hood, and this fellow was walking across a road ahead of me as I came up the road, and I just watched him because I thought it was so curious. It was like 8:30 in the morning, broad daylight. It wasn't one of those 3 a.m. ghost hunts. Broad daylight. This guy's walking across the road ahead of me. So as I got closer, I could see he's very full-bodied, looked lifelike. Just kept walking, and he kept walking off to my right and just walked right into the wall of a small mausoleum.
Oh my goodness.
Right into it.
Oh my God.
So a lot of people go up there and they see a lot of things. They get some audio, and they have a lot of personal experiences. So it'd be a good place to take the guys. And then General Vallejo's house has a ghost of a woman, possibly the general's wife or a housekeeper in there. And it's got a lot of imprints in there too. And then I thought we could go to the winery because the guys could do a little funny stuff, wine tasting, and then get serious and do an investigation there. It'd be a good place to do their lockup, because they like to do the lockdown or whatever they're calling it these days. They like to lock them in, so you could lock them in the dungeon for a while. And it'll be fun.
John Heyer had a question. He wanted to know, did you ever get into the tunnels at Brookdale?
Yeah, I did a long time ago. Actually, I was living down in that area, and I had a friend who was working over there, and he got me down in there. And it's pretty creepy, pretty wet, pretty smelly, and dark, of course. And it's pretty wet, so you feel like you're just, walking on squishy
Now, which
mud.
one? So this was the entrance on the other side of the
back.
kitchen.
Yeah, in the back. And we went a short distance, and it looked like it caved in or something because you couldn't continue. These things. There were some bricks down there and some timbers, but it really wasn't a well-lined tunnel. It wasn't, lined with concrete or anything really good to hold it
Now,
up.
what about the buildings on the other side of that road? The Brookdale owns those as well. Did you guys go over there?
We didn't go over there. I'm currently involved in investigating a house over in that area. It's not part of the Brookdale cabins, which are just across the road, but it's another older house. It's a little bit farther off the highway where there's been some apparition sightings. So I'm working on that. Maybe be there this Saturday night, in fact.
Oh, really?
Possibly so, if the weather's good. We'll see, because it's a bit of a drive from up this way.
Oh, yeah, it's a 2.5-hour drive, isn't it?
Yeah, and so if I don't go this weekend, I'll be going in a few weeks to investigate down there. So I have a client who wants me to investigate the house.
Now, what about, let's see. Oh, I know John was really interested in Sarah Logan. Now, but he had another question. What about Fort Baker? Would they be interested in that location?
Possibly. We're actually looking into Fort Point in San Francisco right now.
Oh, where's that at?
That's right underneath the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
That was built in 1856. And in fact, the son of General Robert E. Lee was out here as one of the engineers working on that, Harry Lee.
That's supposed to be haunted.
Yeah, I've been in there several times, and the problem with that place is that the noise from the Golden Gate Bridge overhead is incessant and loud, and also you get the wind blowing through there, and plus the way the casemates are constructed out of brick and granite, the echo effect is really bad. So I told the producer, I said, it's visually it's a great place. And a lot of us think it's haunted, but it's really tough to get to block out all this extraneous noise that you're going to get there. So it'd be tough to get some good evidence there.
John still wants to know about any further documentation on the story of Sarah Logan.
It's really amazing. It's tough to track down this little girl. Sarah Logan is the little girl who was the niece of Judge Logan, who owned the Brookdale Lodge property from about 1900 to 1920. He was a California Supreme Court judge, but also he had a home in Santa Cruz, and he liked the area, so he bought the property and turned it into a campground for families, and he had a dining hall there. So it was kind of like a vacation spot from 1900 to about 1920. And his wife, in fact, died there in 1909. But then he remarried, and he had a daughter, Gladys, who was born there in 1911. Now, the judge had a niece named Sarah, and she drowned in the creek. It's a little uncertain as to when this happened, but the story goes that she was playing at the edge of the creek. She slipped on a rock, hit her head, and of course she fell into a very shallow water, but it was enough to cover her mouth.
Okay, so everybody's saying, if you always read what people talk about, they say that she drowned in that dining room creek.
Yeah.
She did?
Yeah,
okay.
That's creek, because the dining room wasn't built till about 1922, 1921.
So she drowned before
The creek
that?
was outdoors at that time,
Yeah,
so she fell there. In fact, that's why I saw her at the edge of the creek. When I saw her, I was about 12 and a half, 13 years old, something like that.
Did you tell them you saw her?
Yeah, well, I was there with my family, and the dining hall there has the main floor of it is about 8 or 10 feet above the creek, and the creek has steep banks that are lined with granite rocks. But you can get down there, you can climb down there a bit and get to the edge of the water. So I did that when I was about 12 and a half, 13. I was looking for frogs, pollywogs, whatever's down there. And
Typical little boy.
Yeah, I was down at the edge of the water and looking, and I felt somebody lean up against my left shoulder, And you know that feeling like somebody's looking over your shoulder, you know, kind of doing this with you. And I thought, well, it's my sister, who was 3 years younger than me. She had long blonde hair, and she happened to be wearing something that was white at the time. And so I kind of did this, glanced, and I thought it was her. And just then, my mother, who was standing up on the dining room level, called to me to get away from the water. She was afraid I was going to fall in. I looked up, and my sister was standing with my mother. Just that instant. So I turned, and this little girl was right here still, long blonde hair, and white, looked like she had a white dress on or something. And then as I looked at her, she just sort of moved back a bit and just faded.
Wow.
And I've not been able to find any photographs of her at all, which is unfortunate. But going through old photographs, I found somebody who looks a lot like the apparition I saw.
Oh, wow. Can
And
you guys see
maybe you can
this?
see this.
The camera's
This is what
over there.
the apparition looked like. Yeah. It looked like this little girl with a white dress on and blonde hair touching her shoulder. That's what I saw. Maybe what I saw was a little older than this, but this is the style of dress she was wearing.
Wow, I've never seen that.
So I believe that was Sarah Logan. Now,
see.
a lot of people say that they've seen her in other parts of the Brookdale Lodge wearing 1940s style clothing. And this has actually confused me a bit because although we don't have...
Now, John just said, is the photo related to the Brookdale?
No, this is just an example that I pulled out of the historical photograph collection of a little girl who looks very much like the one I saw. It's not Sarah Logan. But a lot of people say she wears 1940 style clothing. They've seen her in other parts of the lodge. And it's confused me because she didn't die in the 40s. She didn't die in the 40s. If you think about this a little bit, Judge Logan died in 1928 at the age of 86. And Sarah was his niece. So that means Sarah was the daughter of the judge's brother. Because her last name was Logan too.
Yeah.
Okay? So if Judge Logan had a brother who was 10 years older, or a few years older, it's unlikely he could have fathered a child that would have been born in the late 30s.
So
the judge died at the age of 86.
Okay. And who was
1928.
So who was Sarah? His daughter?
His niece.
Oh, his niece.
Okay.
Sarah was his niece.
So,
Okay.
so Sarah was the judge's niece, and Judge was 86 in 1928. So that means it's very unlikely that the judge's brother, had to be his brother to give the name Logan to the little girl. It's very unlikely that he fathered a child in the late 30s because he would have been probably 90.
Oh my gosh.
Very unlikely. So it's very likely that Sarah was born to Judge Logan's brother, who also lived in Santa Cruz, at about the same time that the judge's own daughter Gladys was born, about 1911. Because we've captured EVP of two little girls playing together there. So
With us or
yeah,
when you were
with you
with
guys
us?
were there. Yeah, somebody in the group got the two little girls, and I've got some myself.
Isn't there a little boy as well?
There's a boy in there too. Yeah, there's 49 ghosts there, so it gets a little confusing about who we're dealing with here. But we believe that Sarah was there playing with her cousin Gladys, and they were both born about 1911, 1912 or so. So I have the birth information on Gladys. She was actually born August of 1911. So we believe that Sarah was born about 1911, 1912, and she died about 1919, 1920.
And that makes her...
And it makes a lot of sense too, because this would have been the second family death for the judge at Brookdale. And the following year he sold the place. It's like he said, I'm done. I can't take it anymore. My wife died here. My niece died here. I'm done with it. And he sold it. So a lot of this fits together.
Now, Jeff, when we used to go there, there was some information, and I cannot remember where it came from. And I don't know if it was from a psychic that we might have come along with us one time, but they said that Sarah Logan was pushed into the creek.
Well, that's possible. That there might have been a couple of kids playing at the edge of the
Well,
creek.
they said it was an adult that pushed her in the creek, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Could have been a teenage boy, 15, 16-year-old boy who was running around down there, because the creek was a popular place for the kids to play. It was.
Well, how deep was it?
Well, parts of it were dammed up, so it's a little bit of a swimming hole for them. The part that's up near the front end of the dining hall where the waterfall is, that's 3 or 4 feet deep. And then it tumbles over a few more rocks. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if there were some teenage boys running around the creek, and they might have run by Sarah and give her a shove, and that's all it would take. But I don't think there's any way of verifying that through historical records.
No, I don't think so.
In fact, you can't really find a death certificate or even a newspaper report about the death of Sarah Logan. Well, it's interesting. The newspaper at the time was called the Mountain Echo, and we have copies of the Mountain Echo up to 1917. Copies after that date were all destroyed in a fire in 1932. They were in a library in Santa Cruz, and they were destroyed in a fire.
Oh.
So we can't find any copies of that. There's still some records in a library in Santa Cruz about the Judge Logan family that I haven't gotten access to yet. But look into.
The owners before these people, he was a policeman and the wife was a real estate agent. Now they took some stuff with them when they sold the Brookdale. I wonder if they might have any documentation. Yeah,
it's possible. The place went through so many hands, though. I think the place to look is this library in Santa Cruz.
Now, what about the local historian? Did you ever talk with him?
We talked to the local historian when we did research for Ghost Adventures, and they didn't have much more to offer than what we'll show tomorrow night. Yeah, not much more. So Sarah is a little bit of a mystery still, but so many people have seen her and experienced her that we're very certain that she's haunting the place.
Did you contact her when you were with?
Didn't communicate with her. No. I've got, let me take that back a bit. I've got 2 EVP, which you may hear tomorrow night in the show. I don't know if they made the cut. 2 EVP, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, okay? Because they're a little bit. No, they're not a little bit. They're pretty interesting to me. But I asked Sarah what she does all day long, and then I also ask her if she's happy there. And I want you to listen tomorrow night for her answer.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Maybe we should have did the show after, and then you could have brought your recorder with you.
Well, it's really interesting. I did the Legends of Alcatraz, which was on Travel Channel not too long ago too, and I had to sign a form that said I wouldn't talk about the show publicly at all until we got an air date. And I was kind of busting at the seams to tell people. Of course, my family knew about it, but I couldn't put any information on my website that I'd filmed the show on Alcatraz and all the stuff we found. Couldn't say anything about it. And we didn't get an air date, or I wasn't notified anyway, until about a week before it went on the air. And so I was trying to email everybody and let them know. But about 95% of what we filmed out there didn't make the cut. We filmed. You go into these shows and you film for hours and hours and sometimes days, and you look at what you got. An hour-long TV show is really about 42 minutes of good stuff. The rest of it's commercials and advertisements for other shows and introductory things and that kind of stuff. So you take 3 days of work and drop it down to 42 minutes, and a lot of stuff gets trimmed. So we got a lot of stuff on Alcatraz that it just didn't make the cut.
Oh God! See, you should have brought your recorder.
Yeah.
Okay, we're stopping the show. You're gonna come back. We're gonna do another one. I want to hear those EVPs that you have.
Well, the ones from Brookdale, I can't give you the.
No, but you could have brought Alcatraz.
I could have brought Alcatraz. Yeah.
Oh.
We got some interesting stuff. We actually got not a great place to investigate out there. We got the docks and the dungeon. Which is not something we were prepared for. We were told we were going to go out and do cell block C, which is where the Great Escape guys were, the guys who cut through the walls and made the paper mache heads to put in their beds and all that. So we were all prepared for that, and we got out there, and the producer says, "Oh, we're going to have you guys do the dock and the dungeon." And we thought, you got to be kidding. I was so revved up. In fact, I brought along a lot of trigger objects to put in the cells that I thought would attract the spirits of these guys. I even brought a .44 caliber pistol along, and a knife and some other good stuff. And I was going to lay it out there and see if we got some movement of them or something like that. So I left them in my bag and didn't even tell them I took it. So we got the dungeon, and we got some EVP there. We got some, I'm not a big fan of the FLIR, which is that forward-looking infrared device. They gave me one of those to use. They're loaded with equipment, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, they said
they got the best of everything, don't they?
This was a big production company that came out there. We chartered a big boat. I think we had about 15 people. And when we arrived at the dock, the night tour was just leaving the first night. And all this movie making stuff, TV stuff comes off the boat, and the eyes of the tourists gets really big. You know, they're like, "Wow, we're gonna film a movie out here tonight." So they kept hanging out, and they almost missed their boat back to the mainland because they're watching us. But you know, it was interesting out there. Anywhere you go at Alcatraz, it's spooky, especially at night when the fog comes in and everything. And you know, the place is just so burdened with miserable feelings that are imprinted all over the place. You can't go anywhere out there without picking up some of that stuff.
Now I miss the show. I miss it, and I try to find it.
They're going to repeat it. They've already repeated it once at least.
Oh,
so
I haven't seen it.
just keep watching Travel Channel Directory. The last time it was on was like 1 o'clock on a Friday, I think it was. So yeah, just keep watching for it. They do Legends of Hawaii, Legends of Alaska.
Cheyenne saw it. She said she loved it.
Yeah, it was well done in terms of, you know, the cinematography of it and everything. But
So was this done at night?
yeah, we were out there at night.
So what time did you arrive there?
We got there about 9.
In the morning?
No, at night.
Oh, at night.
Yeah.
Oh, so the area that they gave you, that's all you could investigate? You couldn't go anywhere else on
Well,
Alcatraz?
we had another team that was doing D block.
What about the hospital?
They didn't go in the hospital. No, you know, it's a 42-minute program, and they did some stuff that wasted a lot of time, frankly. One of the theories, they wanted to present a number of different legends associated with Alcatraz. So somehow they got hold of these characters who claim that there's a Loch Ness monster type creature in San Francisco Bay who might have eaten guys who tried to swim from Alcatraz.
Yeah, big sharks.
Pretty ridiculous story. So they had these guys who had a handheld camcorder strip showing this ripple on the surface of San Francisco Bay one afternoon that was interpreted as being like the hump of a Loch Ness monster kind of a creature. So the producers got all excited about that, said, "Let's run with this." So they spent a lot of time out there looking at night for this creature, and if anybody's spent any time in San Francisco Bay, you know the water's not clear. I used to be a commercial diver in San Francisco Bay. It's not clear, a lot of currents, it's windy, it's cold, and plus you've got night. So they're out there looking for this thing, and of course they wasted a lot of time on screen. It's a big segment of the show, and they didn't really find much of anything. So unfortunately, that was part of it. They also went to Sutro Forest, where some of the escapees from the 19th century.
Where's Sutro's Forest?
It's right up there by the University of California Medical School.
Well, I know Sutro's
and
in
that big
Cliff
tower,
House.
that great big radio TV tower that stands on those mountains up there in San Francisco. If you look at the city, you can't miss it. It's this huge tower. That's Sutro Forest. And Sutro Forest back in the 1870s, 1880s was a place where people went to commit suicide. So there's documented about 15 suicides that were done there. And some of the guys who escaped from Alcatraz in the 1880s actually went there. 3 guys we know went there. And
so there were 3 people that actually escaped.
Yeah.
It wasn't those guys that, it wasn't those 3 guys.
No, it wasn't the guys back in 1962. That's the Great Escape guys, portrayed by Clint Eastwood. I think they made it, and I'd like to come back to that if we can, but back in the days when it was strictly a military prison, security wasn't that good, and these three guys actually made it to the dock, stole the boat, and made it to the mainland. So it's not true that no one ever escaped from Alcatraz, because people did in the 1870s, 1880s. So these three guys got to the mainland, went across the city of San Francisco, held up in Sutro Forest for a few days. One of them died up there, I don't know from what, and the other two were actually apprehended and returned to the prison.
Oh.
So part of the show that we did, Legends of Alcatraz, was to go up there and sort of retrace all of this, and Tommy Netzman, who's the president of the San Francisco Ghost Society, was up there leading that part of it. So basically my point is there's a big part of the show which is off the prison island itself. It's other places. So we couldn't show everything we got out there. But I believe that the guys who did the Great Escape, the three guys who left in 1962, actually made it to Angel Island and probably made it to Marin County.
Really?
Yeah. For many years, the theory was that they made this float, this raft,
right,
and they went into the water and they drowned because parts of the raft were found at Angel Island in pieces. But as I researched this, I realized a couple of important things. The raft they built was not just some little tiny thing as big as this desk. It was 16 feet long, 4 feet wide.
How did they make it?
They stole raincoats and rubber cement and literally glued them together, and they stole the pump from the workshop and were able to pump it up with air. Plus they made life jackets for themselves. The theory is that if you go into San Francisco Bay, you succumb to hypothermia really fast because the water's cold any time of year. So the thought was these guys got into the water, they got really cold, they got numb, fell off the raft, and they drowned. Well, I don't think that happened because on this raft, it's big enough that their upper bodies at least would be out of the water. And if you can keep your upper body, head, and shoulders out of the water, chances of succumbing to hypotension or hypothermia are really diminished greatly, enough that you could probably make it 1.25 miles to Angel Island.
So
I think they made it.
How far is Alcatraz to land?
To get to the Fisherman's Wharf area, it's about 1.33 miles or so.
Oh, that's
yeah,
not
it's
far.
not very far.
It seems far, but
yeah,
really...
if you're going to swim it, but people do swim it all the time. There's competition swimming there every year. People swim from Alcatraz to the mainland. But these are conditioned swimmers too. But there is one guy who did swim from Alcatraz all the way to Fort Point, which is 2.5 miles. He took an outgoing current, and Fort Point is right underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. And he actually got there in 1956, I think. He was so hypothermic, though, when he got onto the rocks, he could barely move. So teenagers came by, spotted him, and called the police. But technically, he escaped from Alcatraz. He made it. So it's possible. But I really think these three guys in 1962 made it to Angel Island, and from there, it's just a short distance across Raccoon Straits to Marin County, and they probably did make it.
Wow, and they never got caught.
Never showed up. Now the families of these guys, of course, were contacted by the FBI. Of course, family members said, "Oh, well, we've never heard from him. We don't know where he went."
Well, yeah.
Well, why would they say, "Sure,
yeah.
he called me last week from Des Moines"? You know, he's not going to say that. And to this day, surviving members of the families insist they never heard from these guys. But I'm sure they wouldn't be telling the truth. even at this point.
No.
I think that maybe when they get to the age of 100, they'll be taken off the FBI's most haunted list, or most wanted list. They're still on the most wanted list.
They are?
They're going to stay there till they're 100 years old, then the FBI will take them off. And that's going to come up, I think, in just another 5 or 6 years.
Gosh. It's if they're even still alive, it would be awesome if they would admit to a relative before they die.
Well, I think what will happen is once they die, if they maybe they've died already.
Yeah.
One of the relatives will say, guess what? Yeah, he did. He lived to the age of 86 or something like that in, Louisiana. I think we'll find out sooner or later.
Oh, that would be.
It'll be fun to do that.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, if you get a chance, watch for reruns of Legends of Alcatraz on Travel Channel. It comes up at odd times, but it's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, I want to see that. Mm-hmm. Now, you also did a documentary for Comcast TV on the Queen Mary.
Yeah, I did that a few years ago, and that was shown for a long time on their Paranormal TV on-demand service, which they've taken off for some reason.
Oh, they did?
But I hear it's coming back.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So we did that. We went down, and the film crew came out from Philadelphia for that. They were really a good professional bunch. And we stayed on the Queen.
Now, how did you get involved in that one?
The producer was looking around for somebody who knew something about the ship, and my book was out there, my Ghost Hunter's Guide to Los Angeles, which features the Queen Mary. So they contacted me. It's a good reason to have a website if you are serious about the paranormal business, because you can state your specialization, your expertise on there, and TV producers are looking these things over, looking for somebody with special skills, special knowledge. So if you know something really important about, say, ghost towns in Nevada or something like that, get a website, put that on there, and you'd be surprised who calls you.
Wow.
So they called me and they said, we want to fly you to Los Angeles, get you onto the Queen Mary for a couple of days. You know, they put you up and take care of you, and then we filmed in the first class swimming pool, the engine room, to look at the watertight door number 13, and also we went into a part of the ship that's not been renovated. It used to be a kitchen during World War II, and when the ship was returned to passenger service after World War II, this area of the ship remained just a storage area, workshop, so it was really never improved.
So this was a documentary,
Yeah.
but was it a ghost hunt at all, or was it just a documentary?
Well, they wanted me to go in, and I use a psychic method of paranormal investigation for the most part, supplemented with some instrumentation, but in this documentary I used just my psychic abilities, and I would go in and try to pick up on remnants that are there, spirits that are there, and I caught a number of things, especially at watertight door number 13. And it was really interesting because we went down to the engine room, and there's a pretty big crew, and they said, would you wait here? And they all went down this passageway to the other end and set up a bunch of equipment down there, and I could see that they were all set up. And then producer says, come down towards us. I didn't know they were filming any of this. I thought they just wanted me now to move to the other end of the engine room. So I'm walking down through this area and went through this door, and all of a sudden this horrible feeling comes over me, like this dreaded fear and pain and agony, and you can see it on my face when you look at this documentary. I was just really stunned to feel of these things, and I turned and looked, and I realized I just passed through watertight door number 13 because the number was right there.
What is that all about?
That is a door where in 1956 a crewman was crushed to death in that door.
Crushed?
Yeah, the watertight doors were being tested.
Oh my
And
God.
a warning horn was being sounded, but I'm told that the crew members used to play a little bit of game and kind of jumping back and forth before the door shut. And this guy was young and inexperienced, and he jumped through and got caught, and he was crushed to death. They couldn't reverse this thing.
Oh.
And so the remnants of that are still there. I don't know if his ghost is there, but certainly the imprints of this experience are still there, and so I could feel that. So it was very spontaneous, and I didn't know they were filming at that point, and they caught that. So then they just said, talk about what's going on. So that's what I did, and I did the same thing up in the first class swimming pool and also in the old kitchen of the ship.
Okay, now there's supposedly a little girl that haunts the pool.
Jackie.
Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
Is there really a Jackie?
Yeah, there is.
There is?
Yeah, there's a little girl. Yeah, she probably drowned though in the second class swimming pool, but she likes the first class swimming pool better, so she showed up there. And this was a pretty good production. They had a lot of actors there to portray the things that I was feeling, and they brought this little girl in who was very cute, but they dressed her up with this really weird makeup. She looks like she's almost made up for Halloween.
Oh.
So they got her kind of fading in and fading out and moving around and everything in accordance with the things that I described as I walked through the place. And they had some guys who staged the fight in the ship's galley, which is something I picked up on too when I went into the old ship's kitchen. Had some soldiers in there.
Now, did you get any communication with Jackie?
No communication. Some people do hear her sing. The only thing I could pick up on is her saying hello, but I don't know if she was saying that to me or if it was an imprint. because I didn't really have any real communication with her. But that was really fun. So when Paranormal TV comes back on Comcast on demand, watch for it, because you'll see the ghost of the Queen Mary.
Now, there's another thing I wanted to ask you. How did you become consultant to the haunting in Connecticut? How did you get involved in that?
That's another lucky break, because I have a website, and one of the guys involved, one of the producers involved in that, had a lot of questions about what ghosts can do, what they can't do, that sort of thing. And he just hit on my website. He probably Googled paranormal investigators or something like that, authors / whatever, and my name came up. So he called me up and shot me a bunch of questions, and I said, send them to me as an email, and I'll answer as many as I can. And this started a big dialogue that went on through the movie production.
Now, were you on the set ever?
No, I didn't go to the set. A lot of it was filmed back east, but and they have a lot of stuff in there that I said, it doesn't sound realistic to me. There's one part of the movie, if you've seen it, where this young boy who's got cancer, he's undergoing chemotherapy, he shows up with tattoos all over his body, that sort of thing. I said, I've never run into a situation where a ghost created tattoos all over the body of a living person.
Were they trying to make it realistic, or they fantasized as
well? It was explained to me that this was based on a true story, and the young fellow to whom this happened felt that when he looked at himself, he felt he saw tattoos all over himself. Now, he might have had some hallucinations because of his chemotherapy, or just the anxiety of his illness, coupled with some paranormal interaction. So that might have been his perception. But I said, I've never known a ghost that could create tattoos all over somebody's body.
Now,
but they used it anyway, of course.
So it's based on a true story, and what about the family? Were they involved in this as well?
They were involved too as consultants too, yeah, because it was basically their story.
Right.
Yeah.
And that house really was a mortuary.
Yeah, well, it was a mortuary, a funeral home, and the people who ran the place didn't bury all the bodies. They sort of stuffed them in the walls in the basement.
Oh my! Why did they do that?
Well, yeah, why? I mean, of course they're dead, so who knows?
Oh my!
They didn't leave a note saying this is what we're going to do. But there's some weird people out there. There's some very weird people who do some very strange things, and it leads to a lot of paranormal activity, which keeps us busy.
Oh my God. Well, Jeff, anything else you'd like to add? It was very interesting. Now, see, I've learned some things. Oh, yeah, I know. It's been an hour.
An hour has passed. Seems like it's been 5 minutes of conversation here. Well, I'd like to invite people to visit my website. It's simply www.jeffdwyer.com, and the last name is DWYER. It's Irish. Used to be O'Dwyer, but it's just jeffdwyer.com. I put new things on each week, including the paranormal question and answer of the week, which is on there. And you can tune in. Usually I post it Sunday evening, and you can tune in and learn something every week. Yes,
and thank you so much again for being on the show again, and you'll probably be invited back again. We have some more things to talk about, and I'd love to hear your EVPs.
Well, you may hear the Brookdale stuff tomorrow night. Again, I don't know if it made it into the cut, but they're interesting enough that they should be in the cut for the show. And watch to see what Zach does tomorrow night to Billy Tolley. It's pretty funny stuff.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, everybody, stay with me. I am going to stop the broadcast. Jeff has to go home. And I'm having a second show in a half hour. We'll be doing the Dybbuk box and doing an EVP session, and this will be in a half hour. So if you all want to stay with me, that's great. I am going to stop the broadcast, but I'll be back in about a half hour. So stay tuned. And Jeff, again, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Noreen. It's always a pleasure. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.